Dragon here with the Truth Teller Project series. So every Tuesday, 7 p.m. PST, we're going to be doing live interviews. And I'm so excited to share this story with you tonight. My guest, Jonathan. Say hey, Jonathan.
Hello,
Welcome
everyone.
to the show. So great to have you here. So Jonathan's a friend of mine, and I asked him to come on the show because he has an incredible story to tell. And we were just chatting before we went live, and I asked him what his intention is to share tonight during the show. So I think that that is the perfect setup. So I'm going to let you take it away.
All right. Thank you, Kirsty. I think I just want to be real and to really just tell my story, not to hold anything back, to really be truthful with myself. I think on this journey I've been, I have, hit a lot of bumps, hit a lot of hills. And it's funny, when you had asked me, for some bullet points, I woke up one morning and I just gave you everything, all on a silver platter. And after I got done reading it, it was like I gave you all of me. And after reading it, I saw parts of it that I would give to people in pieces. But what I gave you, it just flowed
and when
through me.
you talk about pieces, because I mean, we've known each other nearly a year, and I've definitely heard pieces, and I knew that you had been abused as a child. I knew that you had some repressed memories. I knew pieces and over different times. Yeah. But certainly the prostitution was new for me. There were, parts around the drug story that I had heard. And so there are a lot of pieces there to talk about. And let me first just say, I got goosebumps when you just said that you're ready to share all of you, and that it's for you, for you to tell your truth, not just for everybody else out there. And for everybody listening and tuning in, that for me, a big tagline that I kind of say is that when we share our truth, we heal not only ourselves, but others. And I believe that we're only as sick as our secrets. There's, a long journey to healing when we hide all of this stuff. And then it leads to those years of addiction and numbing that you've been through. So where do we start? Where do you want to start?
Let's start when I first remembered. When I first remembered everything, it's funny how it came about, because when I had first gotten clean, it was 2009. I had just turned 30, and it was in February. Mm-hmm. And so when I had first gotten clean, I felt that I had something down deep that I wasn't ready to look at. And so I kind of just pushed it down, and I just was like, I'm not ready to deal with this. Mm. I started working the steps, went through recovery, was in a men's group working the steps, and slowly peeled away the onion. And then it wasn't until almost 4 years later, in February of 2013, when the repressed memories started coming. And at first it was, if anyone's ever had them, then I think that it's just something that just came out, and you couldn't like hold it back. And it came from something bigger. Mm. And it was just, Pandora's box was opened, and it was like, here it is. And it was
I think
the
of it
first
as like
layer.
The universe, you get these taps, these slaps, that slowly it starts to shake you until you wake up and listen. But I also think with repressed memories, for anyone who's just tuning in as well, please, I forgot to say at the beginning, but please send us emojis, likes, comments. Like, we can see everything live coming in. Every 15 minutes or so, I'm going to check over there for questions. And so for those just tuning in, hey, Steve, hey, girl, he says, we're just talking with Jonathan about his journey through incest, child abuse, through to his years suffering from addiction, and how he found his healing. And he had a lot of repressed memories. So you had blocked this out for almost 2 decades.
Yes.
And you were just sharing how, like, for anyone who that starts to happen for, like, it can be, you can feel like you're going crazy as well. Like, is this really real? Is there something there? Am I making something out of nothing? So,
yes.
For you, that was one of the most traumatic parts of your entire journey. I mean, that's saying a lot considering what you went through as a child.
Right.
But this was what you felt really the most scared about.
Yes, because I put up the walls to block all these memories.
Right.
So as soon as I started remembering, it was like those walls, the world that I had created came crumbling down.
Right.
So that was more painful. But I think it was more painful for my ego, because my ego was the one that put up these walls.
Right.
Because my soul was like, this happened. Yes. Okay. And my ego was like, no, it didn't. No, it didn't. They wouldn't do that. You know, your family's good to you. Like all those things that you want to believe that for it not to happen came popping in my head. But my soul was like, no, it happened.
When did you get to a point where you trusted it? Because I imagine that at first it's like, is this real? Like, and I mean, we're talking your mother and your grandfather, family members molesting you from, you can recall, as young as 3. And this went on for decades, at least into your teens.
Yes.
And so I imagine that, you know, you're conflicted of, is this real? Is it dreamlike? When did you get to a point where you were like, this happened and I know this is my truth?
Honestly, it didn't. I had the memories for probably a good year and a half until all the memories stopped. And then it was probably just in the past year when I really started doing work on myself without the help of anyone. It was like I needed to take responsibility for everything. And so once I did that, once I made that decision, and the healing that I started doing on myself is when I started, you know, peeling the layers off, and I was able to be comfortable with it. Right. But it took me a while, and it took me a while of not just going through all the memories, but also in life, I was going around in circles, and I kept on hitting a wall and hitting walls and hitting walls, and I wasn't moving anywhere. Wow. So I was getting fed up with my life, and I needed to change something. And then that's when it hit me.
And you were also on a lot of, at this point, like this is when you'd gone through years of addiction and it was escalating. You mentioned in your message to me that you were popping ecstasy like it was Pez.
Yes.
But you also commented that whether you had the awareness then or after when you started to do your work, you were looking for a feeling of joy, happiness, love, and connection that you so deeply wanted. So for you, the drug you were using was also giving you that. But like any drug, it starts out that way.
Yes.
Pretty quickly, you don't have that feeling anymore.
So I would do the ecstasy and I would pop them like Pez. And it was usually, you know, people take them, you go to the raves, you go to the clubs. But I was doing it on Tuesday nights going to the bar. Like I wanted to numb myself, and I just wanted to feel that joy and happiness all the time. So even after it wore off and the whole, you know, come down period, it was like, okay, next day or the following day is like, start popping them again. When like I was looking for any excuse to take them, or I was looking for any excuse to do cocaine, anything to make me happy. That's it. I didn't know. I think consciously, I didn't know what was buried. I just knew that I loved this feeling and I missed it.
And you didn't like the feeling of being in your own skin. You were trying to move away from you. You weren't able to live in your own feelings and your own body. And I think that for people, whether they have repressed memories or just in general have buried stuff that they've pushed down, maybe they're aware of, maybe they've left it locked away for so long. But a lot of us do that. I know I went through years of that after my diagnosis with herpes. I wanted to numb and not feel and not deal. I didn't have the equipment, the tools at that age to know how to deal with my low self-worth and all the feelings that it triggered. So I think that there are a lot of people out there who want to escape and use something to remove the pain and to go towards something else.
Yeah. I just want to point out to that question that I just saw that came across the screen. What was the come down like? Yeah. Because I think that's a very good point. When I came down off of that, whether it was the cocaine or whether it was the ecstasy, like I wanted to hang myself. Right. Like I hated myself. So it was like this balancing act of, I want to feel this high, but then I got to face the consequences of, you know,
being not just in your own body, but also the come down chemically.
Yes.
I want to talk about that feeling of loathing yourself so much and hating yourself as you are. And because I think that there's initial shame that we have when we go through abuse, or for me, it was my diagnosis. But then there's the compounded shame. When we numb and we don't want to deal with life, it usually creates new shame. And so for you, I imagine there'd be some around the prostitution. And for me, you know, dysfunctional behavior, dysfunctional sexual partners, years of drinking. So, and that for me is the hardest part. When you start getting sober or clean or whatever it is, or not using the numbing substances, and all of a sudden you're just there in your own freaking truth, and you've got to look at everything you've done to escape this thing. So how was that for you? Like that realization, like how do you feel now? Like when you wrote that letter out for me in the entirety, because as I said, I knew everything except the prostitution part. How do you even reconcile that this is you anymore, that was who you were?
Honestly, when I wrote that out and I think about it now, it was probably the best thing that I ever did. Just because of the fact that, yes, that was what I did, but that really wasn't me. Everything that I did during my days doing the drugs or the prostitution or, you know, the abuse, it was looking for something. The drugs, it was looking for that joy, looking for the happiness. The prostitution, it was trying to fill that void with the male counterpart that I didn't get from my father. Like I was trying to feed every piece of me that had a hole in it.
Yeah. Oh. You know, and I so relate to that. And I think Maya Angelou's beautiful quote, when we know better, we do better. And for everyone out there who's listening too, we're both getting emotional. I think everyone has, like, that's what shame is. People often say to me, I don't resonate with it. I don't have it. They don't know the word. But shame is this belief that if somebody truly saw me, if someone knew everything about me, that they wouldn't like me or love me. And so we all have those things that we've done or behaviors or things that we've said in our past that cause us to have that feeling of shame. And there is nothing more freeing than releasing yourself from all of that. Like for me, that was the TEDx moment when I did the talk, You're Only as Sick as Your Secrets. It was like, well, it's all out there now. If someone wants to date me, they just Google me, they know it all. And I didn't even realize at the time I did it, that was going to be the beginning of my healing. I thought it was the end. I thought the fact that I could talk about it was the end. So I think for you, like there is this catharsism in laying it all out there, not just the pieces. It's like, now this is the full story.
Yeah, because it's the next step in my growth. It's like I went through, I remembered everything. I saw everything that I did. I saw everything that I, didn't want to remember. I remembered it all. And then it was, okay, so I didn't want to take responsibility for it. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to deal with it. And then as I continued my growth, because I wasn't happy with my life, is, okay, now I need to start doing some healing work. When I started doing the healing work, it was like, okay, I did all this healing work. Now the next step, share it. It's like it's just the next step. It's the next layer of healing.
That's beautiful. I love that. So what do you think your younger self needed to know? Like in your mid-20s, what did you need the older you to come back and let you know?
I needed to acknowledge him. Because for so long, I think he was trying to get my attention and just asking for help, asking to be loved, asking to be cared for, letting him know that it's okay, that it doesn't matter what happened, that everything's going to be okay. And I think that I've gotten to that point to acknowledge him and give him the love and support him. And, it's funny because the one thing that keeps coming to mind is through all of this, and I don't want to pinpoint anybody, from my past, but it's like all that behavior was very negative. But I knew at my core that I wasn't like that, that wasn't me. And I wasn't going to let that behavior change me. I knew I had a good heart. I knew I had a good soul. So no matter what, I wasn't going to let that overcome me. I wasn't going to let that change me. I was going to stay true to myself.
Well, and define you. It's not who you are. It's something you did. And again, this is like for everyone out there. We all have stuff that we would rather keep locked down. And, you know, I'm writing a book at the moment called The Truth Will Set You Free, but first it will piss you off. And man, can it be a mofo? So, you know, oh, Jennifer says, you're all making me tear up. I love your raw, beautiful, authentic honesty. I love it too. This is like one of my favorite interviews. And it was both about intention. Our intention doing this was to share truth, to have fun, to be relaxed, to just, you know, we're friends. So it's an easy conversation, but it's important to have, you know, and this is another thing, like it is not something that enough men in particular, but in general, we don't talk about incest enough. It is something that is, I think, one of the hardest ones to talk about for people, because there's something vibrationally, energetically, and we've talked about this, like the how it resonates in your body. It's like, there's something that makes you just want to like lock that shit down and never talk about it. So I'm really proud of you. And I know that statistically it's 1 in 3 girls, 1 in 5 boys who are abused most of the time in the home. And so there are guests out there who are listening, 30, 40, 50% of them who are on there tonight who may have been through this themselves. And certainly another huge portion who've been through numbing and addiction and not wanting to live. And so I think that I really just want to reiterate that point, that your behavior is, and the things that you did are not who you are. And you knew that there was a you in there that you weren't loving, and that that is at the core of it, that you were seeking, you wanted from dysfunctional relationships, through prostituting yourself, through ecstasy, this love and this feeling, but at the core of it, you actually needed to give it to yourself. You needed to love yourself enough to be clean. You needed to love yourself enough not to sell your body or allow someone to use it or abuse it in that way. And that's the flip side. Like it's so dysfunctional the way we're thinking that we almost like have to go, but to unravel it all is hard. Now, we have a couple of questions here. Steve says, you're on the 12 step. Natasha says, what steps and programs did you use? So I know you did. That was one of the things you looked at when you were getting off coke and ecstasy and alcohol.
Yeah. So
you started with narcotics.
Yeah. So when I first got clean, it was actually the second time, because the first time I actually got clean, I started going to meetings, but I was so ashamed. It's like I went for a couple weeks and then I dropped out and I just kept everything hidden.
Right.
So when I got clean the second time, I went to a therapist first, and I only wanted to go to the therapist and not do the 12 steps and not do the meetings or do anything, because I was so embarrassed. I was so ashamed of falling off the cliff. Like I went back out and I used. So, and he told me, because he worked the steps, he's like, no, you have to go to the meetings and you have to work the steps.
Well, and I think, you know, this is a thing that's important for everyone else too. Like, I think it's something like, statistically, most people relapse 4 or 5 times. I can't remember the exact number, but it's certainly not like, first time, like we're done, it's easy, I'm over it.
No,
like the reality is this shit is hard. And like, I know how you are like such a seeker for healing. Like you're at Tony Robbins, you're at Evolve with me, you're like doing all kinds of weird stuff. Like there's everything that there is to look at. Like you have been on a journey for like 4 or 5 years now where you've fully gone in, okay, I need to go in deep and I need to heal myself, books and classes. And so there's a lot of stuff, but you still go to the 12 steps?
No. So what I did is I did the 12 steps. I worked the 12 steps. And it was after that my life didn't change. It was still the same. And I kept going around in circles and hitting these walls and hitting these walls. And, you know, certain things in life come and, you know, they wake you up and they knock you down, because you need to take responsibility. You need to grow up. So I think at first I thought the 12 steps was the, you know, fix all, but it wasn't. It was just peeling the layer off. And all right, now you're at the core, but now it's time to really do some healing, and that healing for myself, that healing for little Jonathan. And so after going around for a few years and hitting those walls, it was last November that I went to my first Tony Robbins, and that kind of like clicked it. Like that set it off. So I did that.
Well, and I think for everyone, it's different. I have friends who work the 12 steps and it's like their life. They have to be there or they relapse. And others have gone a different path. There is some truth to some work around NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, where they say if you are literally reinforcing the language of I am an addict, that's not always the healthiest. So I think that people have to try different things and expose themselves. But just a quick little break. For anyone who is tuning in, we are talking tonight with my dear friend Jonathan, who's sharing his journey of growing up in an abusive home and environment, going through addiction, and how he's gotten to his place of healing. So feel free to share the video while we're live on your pages. Encourage anybody else to tune in and watch. Feel free to send questions and comments. We can see everything live as we're talking and continuing this conversation. So, Jonathan, how do you think, the abuse for you was repressed for a long time? So it was kind of in your late 20s? How old were you when you started?
When I first remembered, it was when I was 35. So it was just a few years ago.
Right. And so that then shifts everything you've believed about life. Like, it rocks your world in a way that you know, most people can't understand. How do you feel the abuse shaped you and changed the trajectory of your life?
I think at a very, very deep level, I needed to go through that and, some people believe in, when you come into this world and, you have certain karmic things that you have to work on. And I think for me, it was, I needed to come into this world and be responsible for myself. Not put it on my parents, not put it on a friend, not put it on a girlfriend, not put it on this, not put it on that, not put it on something else. Like, I needed to learn the lesson of going through all this and then finding the only way to heal myself is to love myself. Wow. That's it. And then go from there.
And look, I think there'll be people who are watching who aren't there yet. There's a lot of people I deal with who've been through abuse, whether it's incest or rape or different things. And it's like, I didn't choose this. It's not my fault. And I get that. So I want to put a warning out there, because I get that some people aren't going to understand what you just said. But I also know that through interviewing over 150 people on every kind of trauma, that one of the things that when I meet the people who've come full circle and they have healed and done their deep inner work, and they've forgiven and they don't regret it, and they understand that everything happens for a reason, they get to that place only when they're able to see some kind of gift in what happened. And that doesn't have to mean that they wish it on themselves or they would want this for anybody else, but they get to a place where they accept that it did happen, and now I have to find a way to make meaning out of this. Yes. And I have to understand that there are some things that came out of it that have shaped me into being the person that I am today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I want to answer that question that just came up.
Yes.
Because it's a good one.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that. So Becky wants to know if you have a relationship with your mother, and if so, how you've been able to do that. So
my grandfather passed away in the late 90s. So when I remembered, he was already dead.
Right.
He had already passed away. So my mother, that's been a roller coaster. So at first, before I remembered the abuse, I had cut off my relationship with her for other reasons. And then after about a year and a half of all the memories popping up is when I had a conversation with her and my grandmother, and I brought it to their attention. And, things, obviously, they deny it. I'm trying to push my beliefs on them, and it's just clashing. It didn't work.
And we've talked about this, that there, for anyone who's starting to tell their truth, no matter what it is, even if it doesn't have a direct impact, like yours has a direct impact on them, so they have every reason to shut it down. But in my experience, even if you have something that isn't directly impacting them, family in particular can just, they find it incredibly, like you're almost shaking a bottle of water with sand in it and you're stirring up their stuff. And right. You being a truth teller and dealing with your shame, and that can cause them to feel like, oh no, I don't want to talk about that stuff. I don't want to go there.
Absolutely. And I think that might have played a part in it, because I know my family had this beautiful thing. We live in this beautiful house. We live in this part of the town, and, so on and so forth. So me coming and rattling their cages just set it off.
Right.
And I think,
well, you're stirring up their lie, their
right.
fantasy life. They've been living this story. And also, one thing that we haven't talked about here, but we have talked about a lot, is that your mother was also a victim. Your mother was abused by her father. And so she was a 3-year-old child, a 5-year-old child, a 7, and that doesn't make it right that she went down this path herself. But she, there was a lot psychologically going on for her too that led to this in some way, shape or form.
Right. I mean, I have to put it out there because I don't honestly know if she was, but going through my experience, that's what I would believe.
Right.
But,
But your grandfather had abused more than just you.
Correct. So I'm just putting the piece of the puzzle together for me, but I'm not.
You haven't confirmed
sure about her. But one of the things that I think has been most important was, at first, when I remembered, I was very angry at them. And I needed to come to a place where they didn't matter.
Right.
I didn't need something from them. I needed to let go of that and I'm still working on this, the whole forgiveness part, because there is a part, I think there is maybe still a part that,
not there yet.
Is anger.
Yeah. It's early though,
too.
Like, in terms of, it's not like you remembered this for 30, 40 years and you're where you are now. This is kind of fresh in the last 4 or 5 years. And you've been pulling apart all these different pieces between the prostitution and the addiction and all the layers. How do you feel like, for a lot of people, one of the hardest things with those kinds of memories is being able to enjoy sexuality and intimacy going forwards? Have you been able to get to that place yet?
So I've completely stopped that until I'm in a place, because during the 12 steps, I had to look at all my relationships. So when I looked at all my relationships, from my mother through all the women in my life to all my girlfriends, I had to look at them and be like, whoa, like what I was doing was not right. So I've come to a place where I'm on this journey for myself. When it's time for me to go there, I will. But right now it's about me. It's about loving myself. It's about, just doing what's right for me, because I can't bring in somebody else into a relationship until I'm ready. So
when you talk about what you were doing wasn't right, so do you mean in terms of you weren't able to be healthy in a relationship because you were bringing in dysfunctional behaviors, whether it was selling your body, using your body, those kinds of things? Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that that's something that happens for a lot of abuse victims, and it can be an unconscious thing that they don't realize, that they don't even know what healthy looks like.
Right. And my whole thing was, I didn't know how to be a partner. I didn't know how to be the man. I didn't, I had all this toxic energy in me that I was bringing along that I thought was me. And I'm bringing it to the person that I'm with. And it just wasn't working. Or I'm attracting people that, have their own agendas, and I have my agenda. Especially when I was younger, it was my agenda. They got their agenda. So it's just, it's just sex. It's really not a relationship. And then I'm carrying all this energy with my mother from the abuse and the incest into this. And it was a mess. And it's hard to say, like, when that's your very first sexual experiences at a formative, from a very young age, it's hard to be able to separate that out when you're being intimate with somebody now. And correct. I think that's something, a lot of women who've been abused will say to me, when a partner comes up behind them or does something that triggers how the other person used to come up behind them, or, specific things. So they had to learn what their triggers were. They had to learn how to be with their partner without having those visions come in, all of those things. So I think that there's a relearning
or there's a forgiveness piece for them so that you know, because often that forgiveness is, they use the terms that it's only you that stays in the prison when you don't forgive. So the forgiving, and Steve mentioned that's the biggest thing is forgiving yourself, but it's the gift to you when we can get to that place. But it doesn't mean it doesn't take time. And same with when we were talking earlier about seeing this as a gift in our life. That doesn't happen overnight. Like that took me nearly 30 years to get to a place where I would truly honestly say that I have no regrets and this was the best thing that happened in my life, with my getting herpes. So none of this stuff happens overnight. Like this is deep inner work. And
right.
I found this beautiful quote today that I posted on Facebook, and I thought of you, by a Jan Lavanzant. And I love this. And it says, until you heal the wounds of your past, you are going to bleed. You can bandage the bleeding with food and alcohol and sex and drugs, but eventually it will all ooze through and stain your life. You must find the strength to open the wounds. Stick your hands inside, pull out the core of the pain that is holding you in your past, the memories, and make peace with them. And it's you. So Tell me what that makes you think of.
That sums up my journey, because I tried covering it up with food, with drugs, with sex, crazy relationships, the prostitution. And then it wasn't until I stopped all that, and then I had to take a look at it, and then I had to heal myself from that. And then it's also digging deep, and it's what you said. It's about, I have all this experience when I was younger being abused and my past relationships, but it's not the right way to be in a relationship. So I have to relearn the right way, which is being okay with myself, opening my heart to myself, opening my heart to friends, opening my heart to you. And then the next step is, a relationship where I can give 100% of Jonathan to that person.
And it's interesting because I think that when we're so in this pain and shame vortex, we think that it's all about external. I've got to have the relationship. So we stay in stuff and we don't get that, like, it starts with being okay with being by yourself, being okay with the silence, being okay with being home alone, being okay with not having a partner, with not having sex, all those things that we're trying to like bring in when it really just makes us feel more shame and more pain. And we're, it's like it might feel good in the moment, but then the next day and the come down. So for anyone who's just tuning in, feel free to share the link, feel free to make comments, feel free to ask any questions. We're going to talk now about his healing part of this journey, because we've just been sharing about your years of being sexually abused as a child by family members and years of addiction. So what was your rock bottom?
Probably the night that I the second time when I got clean. That was my rock bottom with the drugs and the alcohol. Because, and I remember it like it was yesterday, I was living in Florida. It was a Friday night. I was home by myself, and, anybody that knows that who dealt with an addiction, yes, you do the drugs with other people, but you also do them by yourself. And this was a Friday night. I was by myself. I had some ecstasy, and part of me knew that it wasn't ecstasy. It was something else was in it. I took it anyways. I found any reason to take it. And I remember walking out of my bedroom because I got up after a couple hours and the effects weren't hitting me. I'm like, this is not doing what it's supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. I walked into my bedroom. My heart started racing. And this was a racing that I had never felt before. This was like above and beyond just being, high on coke. This was like, I knew that this was it. Like I was going to die. Yeah. And I thought, okay, go to the hospital. But I'm like, I go to the hospital, they can't do anything. Like they're going to have to wait till I come down. Like they can't do anything. Something happened. And I just said to myself, I know there's something more to life than this. And I walked out of my bedroom and it was like the Red Sea parted. My life was saved. And it was just like a whole window just opened to a new life. And I was given another chance. It was a miracle.
Wow. So that was the beginning of this healing.
Yes.
Like the final, you just needed to have that come to moment, the aha, the aha of the seas.
exactly, like spiritual awakening, whatever you want to call it, it needed to hit me. Yeah. And then after working the steps and nothing working after a few years is when I had it again. Like I just got, and I think people can relate, because you just get to a point in life, and it has nothing to do with the drugs or anything, where you're just not happy and you're trying to do something and nothing's working. And then you just like, you're sick and tired of it. And you're like you just rip open. It's like, enough. And I had that moment, and it was probably back in January of this past year. And it was like, I need to heal myself. And I started going to the sound baths, and it was happened, and it just, the domino effect just happened. And it was the sound baths, and, meeting this chiropractor who also does energy work, and then doing regression hypnotherapy. And then I did medium work, and then doing the Tony Robbins events, then journaling. And like, I was just doing my own work every which way. And then I did a men's retreat. So that healed the father-son part of me. Like I hit everything at its core, everything.
Well, look, I think that, what I love about this is, and everyone's saying, great, honest interview. We need more of that. Yes, we sure do. Thanks, Rod. Thanks, everyone who's tuning in. We've got such great people online, and keep asking your questions and sharing your comments. So I think that there's so many things that this all makes me think about, but that when you just listed off all those things that you've tried and done, I think what people need to understand out there, if you are stuck, if you are still in that place where you're in the shame vortex, where you don't love yourself, where you're seeking through food and sex and alcohol and dysfunctional people, and you know that you're attracting the wrong partners, one, you have to go within, and two, you have to do a shitload of freaking work. Like, this is like your full-time job, right?
Yeah.
And I've been there where it's like an entire year where it's like, I'm going in, rolling in the deep, and I'm rolling up my sleeves, and I'm like, okay, like, and that's the truth of it. And you don't, what hit me as you said that, because we've done a lot of the same things in this seeking journey, and then a lot of different weird things. But I think for people out there listening, it's like, there is no scroll that has the pathway for your journey. There is nothing. And your rock bottom was different to my rock bottom. But what there is everybody gets whispers from the universe. Everyone gets slaps in the form of dysfunctional relationships, unhappiness, sadness, bad job. You get woken up, you get shook, and there are messages if you listen for them. And then the seeking part, you just get led. You get sort of like, oh, I meet the chiropractor. Oh, I go to a sound bath. That feels good. Oh, yes, that feels better than what I've been. And you kind of, oh, I'll go to Tony Robbins. Oh, I'll go to, like, you kind of, if you're listening and you're ready to find a way to feel better and to stop the dysfunctional behavior, you do get sort of led to these different people and places and experiences that can help you.
Absolutely.
So I believe that for everyone in their healing, it's like a jigsaw puzzle, and there's all these different pieces that come together to help us get there. What would be one or two of your huge pieces of that jigsaw to healing?
One would be the journaling.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's time with myself. Yeah. And it's funny how that started, because one day I used to do yoga in the morning, and then one day, and I used to do it online, and then it had a meditation class, and it was 17 minutes. And I was like, I couldn't sit still for 17 minutes by myself, quiet. And I sat down and I did it. And I was like, wow. So it's being with yourself, meditation, journaling, and then building on that, because you can always go back to the journaling, and you just build on the different events, or the different workshops, or whatever it may be, and then you build on that journaling and being with yourself. But you always come back to, because the events aren't always going to be there, or maybe you don't have the money, or XYZ, but you always have the journaling, you always have yourself, you always have that time for yourself, and it doesn't cost anything.
No, that's the best part. It's free.
Right.
But I think, and again, I hear a lot of these universal things that come up for people as they start to get to doing their healing work and that. And one of them is that they get triggered by certain things. So they get triggered by journaling, or they get triggered by doing the meditation. And so if you are finding yourself uncomfortable, if you are not liking how this feels, that's actually a good sign. Yeah. It's like, so at first, everything's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel uncomfortable to not drink. It's going to feel uncomfortable to eat healthier. It's going to feel uncomfortable to be quiet and be alone and not stuff it down with food or go and grab a man and have sex or whatever it is that you do to stuff down your feelings and to make yourself feel good. It's going to feel uncomfortable to not do that and to do what is actually healthy. And so you're not going to like it, and you're going to have to learn to sit with those feelings. And that's what it is ultimately, that we're sitting with feelings when we journal. We're sitting with feelings when we are quiet and we're alone and we're meditating. And at first, we're not used to that because we've been spending years, decades, in fact, trying not to sit with our feelings. and for some people in very overt ways, becoming a junkie or a prostitute, and for others in small little ways, like eating too much food and that. So everyone does it in some way, shape or form. So I think that's, that process of learning to be okay with your feelings is something that people have to like really give a go. I'm glad you said journaling, because I think that's a really important one. Someone says here, if we can help those that are still hurting by being transparent, it becomes more real to them. Yes. Well, as I said at the beginning, my philosophy around this is that when we share our truth, we help heal not only ourselves, but we heal others. This is cathartic for both of us. It is a reminder for both of us how far we've come and where we still have to be vigilant and we still have to look at it. Like, I still have times where I try and numb and escape my feelings, not in the same dysfunctional ways before.
I do too, yeah.
In small little ways, and we have to look at that. So I definitely think, thank you for that comment. I think that sharing our truth helps so many people. So what do you want to say at this point? What's coming out for you?
There is one thing that I do want to add is, you had mentioned that the universe gives you, little, statements. They give you little things here and there. And one thing that I remember like it was yesterday is when I was in Florida and I was doing the drugs and I was up all night, doing the cocaine all night, I would be watching TV. And one thing that I would always notice is and it'd be 3-4 o'clock in the morning, is I would always get a commercial for a rehab center. Always. And I knew it was the universe telling me something. And I would watch it and be like, nope, not ready yet.
That universe can be yet.
And as soon as you said that the universe gives you, and that was the first thing that it reminded me of, because I remember sitting there and I'm watching it and I'm like, no, I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. And then it just, when it comes, it comes. Like you can't. And that's you can help it, but it's like when you're ready, you're ready. You're going to go in.
And it's hard for those of you who have family and friends and loved ones who are stuck in abusive relationships or dysfunctional patterns or just won't change or are alcoholics or addicts. It's really, really freaking hard to watch, and not everyone makes it through the other side. But sadly, until they are ready, you can help by giving them some of those universal like taps and that, and you can be there and you can love them and you can support them. But sadly, a lot of the times it just takes until we are ready and we're ready for ourselves to wake up.
Yeah, absolutely.
What would you say to someone who is numbing their pain, who is in that place that you were in your teens, in your 20s, in a really dark place where they're full of self-loathing, in the pit?
It's not as bad as you think. I think, the walls and the barriers that we put up in our minds not to remember it, not to deal with it, not to, feel it. When you actually go through it, it's not as bad. It's more, and I said this in the beginning, it's more you're crushing the ego than anything, because, he's the one that put up, or she's the one that put up that wall to protect yourself, thinking, I don't want to remember it. I don't want to go there. I don't want to feel it. But there's something at a deeper level that when you feel it, you're like, okay, I can deal with that. It's not that bad. And you look back and you're like, yeah, it's not that bad. Yes, it was traumatic. Yes, absolutely. Like, you can't deny it, but you look at it and it's like, it's not as bad as I made it out to be. And I think a lot of people say that after you go through something, you're like, it's not that bad.
Well, the monster that we create and the decades of building on that shame, and as I said, all the things we put out, like torture, like that's way worse. Like, let's do that for another 40 years instead of just dealing with whatever initially happened and going, I'm going to have to really look at this. And I don't know how I'm going to face it. And especially something like incest or rape in particular, I think can be some of the most traumatic things for people to look at. But no matter what you've gone through, for you, pain is pain. There's no right, wrong, worse, bad, pain is pain. And so whatever your pain is, it's that moment where you have to go, is it harder for me to sit with this and feel these feelings and process them? And it might take me a year or two and I may have to be alone and it might be a really dark, horrible, painful journey, but I can come out the other side of it? Or do I numb for 20, 30 years and cause addictions and destruction and all other kinds of dysfunctional behaviors and self-loathing that are way worse? It reminds me of that quote I just read today, when the risk to remain a tight bud is more painful than the risk to blossom.
Yeah.
It's like we have to be willing to take the risk to do the healing work, to go through it and get out the other side. And fear is, I always talk about that idea that you have to hold its hand. It's not going anywhere. It's going to be with you. You have to hold its hand and you have to be willing to go through it to get to the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was what you just said was probably perfect from where I was just in the past year. Was, okay, I did the work in the steps. Now I need to, before I realized that I need to actually heal myself, was I can't keep on going my life like this another 10 years, another 5 years, another 20 years, another 30 years. Like I couldn't do it. And then after that marinating and hitting those walls again, and it keep on coming up. And this was just me saying it to myself, like, I don't want to keep on living like this. I can't do it. Like, it's just not an option for me. And then it just breaks, like it snaps and it hits you. You're like, okay, this is what I need to do. Boom. And I knew I needed to heal myself. That's it. I didn't know how, but it was just, you need to heal yourself. Okay. You need to love yourself. Okay. And then slowly, the universe gives you what you need.
That's amazing. Well, oh my gosh. Well, we're nearly at 8, so I feel like we need to wrap up, but I have so enjoyed this conversation. Is there anything final that you want to add?
No, just that I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity. I think, how, how we met and how the universe put us together, and it was just heavenly guided. And then, just in the past few weeks about you asking me to do this, when you asked me, I knew after that weekend of Evolve, like you asking me, I'm like, wow, this is the next step. Like I'm ready to do this now. So I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for this, because it means a lot. You have no idea how much this means to me. Well,
we're both going to get, I'm really proud of you. And I know that, telling our truth is powerful. And this was the final piece for you to put it all out there and take the next step in your healing. And I'm so glad that you're in that place. And so for everybody who is tuning in and who's been listening to us and all of your beautiful comments, thank you so much. We're going to have to go because we're both going to be blubbering very shortly. But I want to say, I want to recap on a few things. I think that one of the most powerful and profound things you said in the beginning is that you knew that this behavior, the prostitution and the drugs and the dysfunctional stuff that was going on, was not who you are, and that at the core and the essence you are this beautiful hearted, amazing human being and human doing, who just through gifts like this, being able to speak your truth, is helping so many other people. And I know how much further you have to go and how much more you're going to do in this world, and I'm just in awe of that. And so I think for anybody out there who is stuck in that dark place and hasn't fully gotten to their place of healing or is almost there, like, I want you to remember that you are not defined by something that you may have done or said, and that when we know better, we do better. And there is always an opportunity for redemption and growth, and to love ourselves and let the light in, and to see who we truly are. And so If you have just tuned in, feel free to go back and watch from the beginning, because this was an amazing conversation, one of my favorites. And I'm so glad that we set that intention beforehand, that we were just going to like have fun and be friends on this chat and not interviewer and interviewee. And I think that it's from the comments, people are really enjoying the realness and the authenticity that came through. So feel free to go to YouTube and watch over 150 other episodes for anybody who's just tuning in on KirstyTV.com or on YouTube under Kirsty TV. We have playlists that categorize the topics from abuse and trauma and rape to grief to mental health. So if there's something specific that you're going through, those are incredible resources. I always recommend that people watch one 10-minute video every few days as they're going through this healing process, and journal. As Jonathan said, journaling was a huge part of his healing. It's so cathartic. But watching one of those interviews, or even this after Jonathan's spoken, and sit down and write, like, what did it bring up for you? What has it triggered? How are you feeling today? Like, what are the conversations that you're having with yourself? So I love you all, and I am so grateful to you, Jonathan. So thank you again for being here. And for everybody out there, I hope that you have a fantastic night. Every Tuesday, we're going to be doing these interviews. So stay tuned and keep an eye out for them, and join our conversations and keep the comments coming. And even as, you know, tomorrow, as thousands more tune in and watch this who weren't able to watch it live, I love you all too. And put any comments and questions, and we'll continue to come back to this feed and answer them. Mwah. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Bye.